Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the witnesses for being here. I'm concerned by something that Professor Hammond said, that there's already a certain degree of accountability in the rulemaking process when, according to a recent study, the Department of Health and Human Services rulemaking practices from 2001 to 2017 revealed that 1,860 FDA final rules, 98% of their total, had been issued illegally, and that other agencies had similar problems in violation of Buckley versus Vallejo, where the Supreme Court held that rulemaking is a significant government power that may be exercised only by officers appointed in accordance with the Constitution's appointment clause. So what we have are unappointed, unelected bureaucrats issuing rules against the law, against the Constitution, and against court rulings. That's why I've introduced legislation called the Ensuring Accountability in Agency Rulemaking Act. It's a bipartisan bill. It says that all rules, except in limited circumstances, have to be signed and issued by an individual appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. It's common sense. It's compliant with the Supreme Court precedent, and it would ensure the accountability that the professor claims exists, but really does not at this point. You know, we have a situation where the Biden administration the regulatory burden totals greatly exceed those of its immediate two predecessors. 517 rules have been issued, costing $318 billion in total and requiring more than 218 million hours of paperwork, not by bureaucrats, but by American taxpayers and businesses to comply with these regulations. So, as the AAF put it in their research, the overarching conclusions drawn from this data are hardly surprising. The Obama and Biden administrations imposed regulatory burdens in the hundreds of billions of dollars, while the Trump administration was nominally deregulatory. So in addition to co-sponsoring the REINS Act, we need to take action legislatively to regain the rulemaking power of the Congress. And I would go to ask Ms. Ho, let's go to another agency. The FTC, under Chair Lena Khan, recently announced a proposed rule that would purport to prohibit non-compete agreements nationally. This comes on the heels of California weakening or eliminating the enforceability of non-compete agreements, which China has capitalized on, and is another method in their arsenal to steal U.S. intellectual property, specifically trade secrets. Do you believe that the proposed rule exceeds the FTC's statutory authority?
Thank you for the question. Without commenting on particular rules, I will underscore that one thing your question highlights is that one way that we know or we can tell or suspect that an agency is exceeding its authority is when it acts in an area that it has not typically acted in before. That's one of the aspects of the major questions doctrine that has been, I think, a topic of interest lately. So where I think one clue perhaps that an agency may be acting outside of its authority is when it is acting in an area that it has not acted in, and also an area where in our system of federalism states have typically acted.
What's your position on the constitutionality of rules issued that by non-confirmed individuals, essentially violating Buckley v. Vallejo?
I think that's an excellent question. I think I would need to know sort of more facts and circumstances to opine definitively. But I do think, again, your question highlights issues of accountability, accountability to voters. Mr.
Kleckner, I believe you spoke to Ms. Khan and the FTC a little bit earlier. Did you? Okay, can you speak to that? All right, Mr. Wolfson?
Yeah, I think that for the FTC to step into an area that they have never previously found authority in the FTC statute, to then say we now have the authority to bar particular behaviors, again, regardless of whether that is a good or bad law. You know, there are a lot of states, red and blue, that are addressing non-compete clauses. So regardless of whether or not that is a good thing, it's kind of like if Health and Human Services said we're going to regulate minimum wage requirements. It's not their bailiwick, and having them do it creates all sorts of problems. And regardless of the level of expertise of the people inside the agencies, it doesn't ever seem to be the case that the people who are at FTC would be the ones in the best position to evaluate those kinds of questions.
All right, thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.